Praise be Jesus and Mary. Today on Fatima Today, we talk about some very exciting topics. Monique and I finally get reunited after a few months because she's been at the March for Life and also the Ultimate Marian Pilgrimage. So we'll recap you on those events, as well as the Fatima Center's conference, where Dr. Micah Hickson had some breaking news regarding the consecration of Russia and the perspective of two bishops. Stay tuned. This is Fatima Today, our weekly show that looks at all events through the lens of Fatima. I'm David Rodriguez and my co-host Monique Kowecki. Monique, it's good to see you again.
Thank you, David. It's good to be back. I feel like I've been away for a long time going on all of these Fatima Center events.
Yeah, well, we've been really busy as the Fatima Center staff, and we've been doing certainly some very interesting interviews. So I'm glad that people have been joining us for those. Do catch, for example, Father Murr's interview if you haven't. Some really great details in that show, as well as Michael Hitchborn. But it's good to be back, Monique, to kind of get back to our regular routine where it's you and me talking about some events.
Yes.
And I certainly think we have a lot to talk about because we've been so busy. Several things that I hope we can talk on today is just one. I know you were up at the March for Life in Ottawa. For Americans, obviously, Canada's March for Life is on a different day than Roe v. Wade. It's not on January 22nd. And then you were also part of the Ultimate Marian Pilgrimage, following the footsteps of Father Gruner. And you got to even remember the 10th year of his death, actual day he died, there at Fatima. So I want to kind of find out more about that, ask you some questions since I wasn't on it. And then, of course, just this past weekend, or 10 days ago now, it just time's flying. But anyway, we had our Fatima conference in the Cincinnati area, and we definitely want to get into that a little bit because one of our speakers, Dr. Micah Hickson, who's also a investigative reporter for LifeSite News, had some breaking news at the conference, things that she was reporting for the very first time at our conference. And she has subsequently written an article for LifeSite. We put it up at our website regarding the consecration of Russia and how bishops are coming around on that front, finally accepting what Father Gruner said like 20 years ago. So we'll get into all that in the show. But first of all, Monique, I'd just like to ask you a little bit about the pilgrimage. Like, how'd it go? Any, great stories? You always have great stories, Monique, to tell us. So what happened on this pilgrimage that you can share with the audience?
Okay, well, I'll give you the bare bones details, and then I'll go into some stories. So, we flew into Paris. We got to see, the Sacré-Cœur Basilica. We
My
got to see
favorite
the
church.
Miraculous Medal. Church. Is it
No, I'm
Sacré-Cœur
sorry.
Church?
When you mentioned Sacré-Cœur, I can't help but say that it is, out of all churches in the world, my favorite, along with the Wieskirche in Germany, in Bavaria. But I love Sacré-Cœur, and they've had Eucharist adoration there for so long. It's a magnificent and
It,
beautiful.
it, it was a beautiful church, and just on a non-religious level, I have to tell you, my husband said, "Look, you can go up to the top, 293 steps." So we paid extra to go up, and we were in this tiny little tower, and we're just going like in a spiral staircase all the way up, and you get to about the 100th step, and you realize I still got 193 to go. And if I go back down, I'm going to run into people coming up. So I'm kind of committed. So it was a bit dizzying, but I have to say it was worth it. The view from up there was amazing. But
Well,
the
I'll tell
church
you,
was gorgeous.
just a couple of other things on that one. It's so connected to Fatima, because of the Sacred Heart, Immaculate Heart connection, but it's called Montmartre is where it's built. That's the Mountain of the Martyrs. So many Catholics were murdered there during the times of the French, really after the French Revolution. And they built this church specifically in reparation for those martyrs and in reparation for the fact that France disobeyed our Lord and did not get the country for France consecrated to the Sacred Heart. And so we've always talked on this show about the connections there with that and the Immaculate Heart. And I wonder if, ever since I was younger and didn't even know the Fatima connection, that's one of the reasons why it was sort of like in my heart that this was such a church of great importance to me. And then they have adoration there all the time, Eucharistic adoration, which is obviously very connected with Fatima. In fact, if you go at night, you can even get in through a side door. You have to, because they'll keep the doors locked so people don't get in. There's this little side door you can go and knock and get in for the adoration. So really, really wonderful church. I'm really glad you guys made that as part of the pilgrimage.
Oh, it was beautiful. And not all, but when I was there, I thought, this is the church that during the Olympics, when they had all those blasphemous things happen and the power went out in Paris, that church was the only thing that was lit up in all of Paris. And I was thinking about that while I was there, and it really does overlook all of Paris. The view from there is spectacular. It's a beautiful church, and of course, dedicated to the Sacred Heart. Is a very, very important church. And I was really happy to be able to go there. That was one of the first churches that we saw when we came into Paris. So that was a great experience. I'm very happy that I was able to see it. And then the next day we went to the miraculous medal chapel on the Rue de Bac, where Our Lady gave St. Catherine Labouré the miraculous medal. So that was very, very special to me. I've always wanted to go there, so I was very happy to do that. And then we also went to the Church of St. Vincent de Paul, where his heart is kept. And we also went to the foreign missions, where all of the uh, I guess the new priests, they wanted to spread the faith so bad, and they knew that they had a high chance of being martyred in whatever country they were being sent to, and yet they wanted to give their all for Christ. And seeing all of the relics of all of these different priests who went the foreign missions. France was well known for all the priests that it sent to the foreign missions. So that was very, very interesting. So Paris itself was lovely. We did go to Notre Dame so that we could see it, but those other churches were really important. That we were able to see where all of these great miracles took place, and the important historical value of them all. And then we were on a high speed train down to Lourdes. Lourdes was breathtaking. I don't know how else to say it. It was, I mean, aside from it being beautiful, the weather was fantastic. We did the Stations of the Cross going up the mountain. Those are the most beautiful Stations of the Cross I think I've ever seen in my life. They were life-size bronze. I think they were bronze figures, but just amazing seeing our Lord on the cross between the two thieves, like life-size, and all the figures, that were involved in the Passion of our Lord around. Absolutely amazing. I mean, if anybody could ever do any Stations of the Cross, that would be the one that I would highly recommend. Even the burial in the tomb, there was a natural cave there. It was just absolutely spectacular to do these Stations of the Cross, and then to do them with Father Stalin, because Father Stalin was our spiritual director. The meditations he had for the Stations of the Cross, both at Lourdes and at Fatima when we went there, were amazing. Plus, he took us into the Basilica in Lourdes, and in the lower chapel, they've got these beautiful paintings of the 15 mysteries of the Rosary that he just explained so well. The meditations for all of those were unbelievable. I mean, I can't recommend Father Stalin enough if you want a Marian priest to go with as your guide to explain all the places that you're seeing. It was wonderful. So
And
Lourdes was great. We saw the grotto,
and
of
those
Our
pictures
Lady.
that you're mentioning, by the way, Monique, I'm pretty sure also they're the ones that our video photographer Laura went to Lourdes and took pictures of, so that we could put them in our rosary booklet. So for those who get our rosary booklet, they are the pictures from Lourdes, and those are the ones that
They are the mosaics from Lourdes. I have to say, they're better in person.
always.
But they are beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful, and just even being there at the grotto where Our Lady appeared to Saint Bernadette. It was quite amazing.
Well, then in all of this, I know once you got to Spain and Portugal and you get to Fatima, you're there during the blackout. I heard it on
Yes.
the news and I thought to myself, oh no, I wonder how they're doing. The entire country, both countries are gone. No electricity. What was that like? I mean, did you all think, oh no, it's the apocalypse or yeah, I mean,
No, no, it was nothing that dramatic. I have to say, I think Our Lady really protected our group. We were hardly touched by the blackout at all. We were actually on a bus that was traveling from Salamanca, where the body of Saint Teresa of Avila is normally kept. We were traveling from there to go to Fatima. So we were on a bus. So we had no idea the power was out. We were just driving on the highway. It was only when we stopped at a rest stop and went in, to use the washrooms and grab something to eat, that everything was in darkness. And we're like, oh, and then people were saying there was a blackout. At first they were saying it was all over Europe, then we found out it was Spain, Portugal, and southern France. But you could buy sandwiches for cash, and then we just continued on our traveling. When we got to Fatima, the hotel we were staying at had a generator, so we still had dinner like usual. We did have to use the flashlights on our phones to walk down the streets to get to the Fatima Basilica to go to the candlelight procession. That was the only time, because then once we got to the basilica, they had emergency power, so they had a few lights on, and of course we did the candlelight procession, which was beautiful. And yeah, I don't know if you want to call this a mini miracle or not, but as soon as the candlelight procession was over, all the power came back on, and we walked home without using our flashlights on our phones. So we were very untouched, really, by the blackout, except for a few minor things.
Yeah, well, I got a couple of other stories from some of the pilgrims that I guess were only able to join you midway through. I think they missed the France part. They only got there for Portugal. And they were telling me that when they landed, they're still in the airport. They haven't even gone through customs when everything goes blacked out. And so that's got to be tough because you get to a new country, you are stuck in the airport. There's no electricity. Like they don't even want to let you into the country. You're wondering how long this is going to take. There's no answers. There's a lot of questions. And from what he told me in the end, they had held them so long, they let them go through into the country without really going through all the proper verifications and things. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. Who knows who else might have gotten into the country at that time? But anyway,
That's actually a good point, because it is true. It is true. I forgot that we had the extra joiners come to Fatima, and they did tell us that story, which was incredible. But even there, Our Lady protected them, because I think they got one of the last cabs that was allowed into the airport to be able to get them out of there. So they were obviously protected by Our Lady during this time, because I did hear stories on the news later that people had been stuck in subways and elevators, for hours and hours. So obviously it was very horrendous for a lot of people, but I do have to say Our Lady did protect our little group, even the people
tell
who were
me,
stuck at the airport.
so now tell us about April 29th. That was the 10th.
Oh, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Father Stalin gave a requiem mass on the 10th anniversary of Father Gruner's death. Beautiful mass. And he gave a wonderful sermon, absolutely wonderful sermon that I hope that we can post uh, you know, um, on the internet at some point. It was a beautiful sermon, very fitting tribute to Father Gruner on the 10th anniversary. And it was nice that we were able to be in Fatima on the actual date of his death. It was a very special time. Absolutely. And I know that I think the Fatima Center did things here as well, where they prayed the rosary at his gravesite. Where he's actually buried. And there was a mass said for the repose of his soul as well. So he had a lot of masses said for him on the commemoration of his 10th anniversary, but the mass in Fatima was very special. And I
And then
was
what about
privileged
I
to be there.
know we had told everyone with our with our first Saturday challenge and collecting all the first Saturdays that we would be entrusting those or giving those to Our Lady. How did that go down? Or
Yeah. Father Salem brought them to the Chapel of the Apparitions on the site of Fatima when we went to the basilica the next day after the candlelight procession. That was the actual day. Like, the candlelight procession was the day before Father Gruner's death, and then on the day of his death, we went to the basilica, and Father Stalin did present all of the completed first Saturdays that we had at the Chapel of the Apparitions, which
yeah,
was
that was
lovely.
just very touching for me to know because it's like Father Gunnar did so much to promote the first Saturday devotion, and so that we could in turn sort of honor his memory by giving Our Lady all these first Saturdays. And so many of you who watch this show and follow the apostolate have worked hard to collect. It truly, I think, very moving, and I'm sure it pleased Our Lady very much. Please
Yes.
don't stop. Continue to do that first Saturday devotion every first Saturday. And again, we'll be collecting them again towards the end of this year so that we can present those to Our Lady as well. So let's keep it up. We're having a first Saturday, not this coming Saturday, but next week will be the first Saturday in June.
Right. Right. In 2 weeks. So we had a couple little stories that happened while we were on the pilgrimage. And of course, everybody brought the intentions. We brought the intentions of the Fatima supporters. We brought intentions of our family and friends that asked for them, and our own intentions. And of course, being the Jubilee year, you can get plenary indulgences for all the different churches that we went to, and we had daily mass, so we were able to earn those plenary indulgences with each Holy Communion that we received at daily mass, which was lovely. But a couple stories. The first story, we had one of the pilgrims who was a late joiner. He wasn't scheduled to go on the pilgrimage. He really wanted to go on the pilgrimage. I think he was trying to sell his car, but he had to get it in working condition before he could sell it. And word got around that he was trying to sell the car, and somebody came to him and said, I want to buy your car. And he explained, he had to get it in working condition. He says, I don't care. I can fix it myself. And he gave him the exact amount of money for his car that this man needed to go on the pilgrimage. And so he was a late registration, but he was so grateful to be able to come. We were so happy to have him. The zeal and love for Our Lady that this young man had was amazing. His first name was Christian, and he really did embody all of the Christian virtues. He helped one of our fellow pilgrims who wanted to go on the Stations of the Cross in Lourdes, but because it was all uphill, going up this mountain, she was worried she wouldn't be able to do it. So we got a wheelchair for her, thinking we would be able to push it. Oh my goodness, it was very hard. This young man was really strong, and he pushed her the whole time of the Stations of the Cross. He was practically at a 90-degree angle at times, pushing her up this hill. And so not only did he earn extra merits for the penances he did for pushing her up the hill, but that lady as well was able to participate in this amazing Stations of the Cross with all the meditations Father Stalen gave, due to his great charity and his strength. So that was wonderful that Our Lady was able to work it so that he could be there.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine that
other
because
pilgrims.
I've actually been at the end where I'm the one pushing a wheelchair with could have been a grandparent, some other people as well. And it's not that easy. It's strenuous. And one detail though that I wanted to mention, Monique, because you told me this the first time you told this story, and I think there's a strong connection here, especially with the story of pushing him up, is that the man who wound up buying the car and was willing to fix it himself just kind of came out of the blue as a police officer.
Yes,
And
he
when you
was.
told me that, what struck me is that St. Michael is the patron saint of police officers. And anytime I know a police officer, right, I pray to St. Michael for him. And St. Michael is very much connected with Fatima, as we know. He appeared there. And obviously, he would be one who would have special care for for the weak and the vulnerable in our church, in the society. So I
Yeah,
thought there was a real neat connection there that we shouldn't fail to mention,
yeah.
because God's definitely at work in these kinds of things.
Definitely. That's a good point. Thank you for adding that, because I did forget that one detail. And then the other story, I have to say, I've been kind of reluctant to tell it. I'm not reluctant to tell it to my friends, I will tell you that much, but reluctant to tell it publicly. But it did happen. People are free to believe me or not believe me. And I wasn't asking for any grace. I really wasn't. I was trying to gain indulgences, plenary indulgences for myself and for souls in purgatory of all of my relatives. And that's really all I was asking from this pilgrimage, aside from being able to commemorate the 10th anniversary of Father Gruner's death. And I was touching my rosary to many different relics. And then when I got to Lourdes, my husband and I were standing in line to the grotto, and I saw some people, touching their rosaries to the actual grotto. And I said, "Oh, that's a good idea." So I took my rosary out, and before I could even touch it to anything, I was kind of taken aback, because this rosary, all the beads and little beads on the crucifix were like an amber or topaz color. And when I pulled my rosary out, the beads for the decades of the rosary were all purple. Now, the beads on the crucifix were still topaz, which was interesting. It was almost like you could see the comparison between what the colors used to be and what the colors were now. And the beads were all purple. And I even said to my husband, "What color is this? What color are you? Am I seeing something wrong here?" He's like, "That's purple." And I said, "But this rosary was not purple." So I thought that was very interesting. And I thought, like, what can this mean? And I told Father Stell, and he said, "Well, you obviously received a grace." But I was like, "What does it mean?" Well, nobody could tell me what it means. But I have to say, my first thought, because I'm very visual, and I like matching the liturgical colors of the year. So, for instance, during Advent and Lent, I'll oftentimes wear a purple chapel veil. Of course, on the pink Sundays, but the Latari Sunday, or what, I'll wear a pink chapel veil. I try to match the liturgical colors if I can. I don't always have all the veils, but I like the color thing, and I think Our Lady knew that, and so she made they're purple, and all I could think of was purple usually stands for penance. in the liturgy. And I thought, I think Our Lady wants me to do her penance, and she would not be wrong, because I'm really good at the praying part, not so good at the penance part. That was my first thought. I don't know for sure, but it was something that happened to me. I hope people don't think like I'm a crazy lady. I hadn't even touched anything yet, so there couldn't be a chemical reaction with the water or anything. I had just literally opened it up. That's my own personal experience. People are free to believe or disbelieve me as they want, but it meant something to me anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think that's beautiful that you share that. I mean, I've had, my own experiences like that. I think when you are trying to live the faith, God is always giving us signs. I mean, one thing I really like about your story too, Monique, is how you interpreted the sign, right? I think that shows that you're not being quote unquote like nutty or anything. I mean, the fact that you come away saying Our Lady gave me a grace and all I can get out of that is she's calling me to penance. That's very much in line, with the sense of the faith. And that's very heartening to hear. I think no matter what happens, whether it is of the more supernatural type, of the more miraculous type, or even of a natural explanation, when we see these events, because even things that we consider natural because they don't violate any of the physical laws of the earth, it doesn't mean that God's providence isn't behind it. I mean, God's providence is behind all things, and we should be right seeing everything in light of what is God trying to tell me. What does this mean in light of eternity? If there's nothing that Our Lady teaches us at Fatima, it's precisely that. So I think it's wonderful that you look at it that way. I remember one time, some years back, I was with a group of people and we were praying the Rosary at a chancery of the diocese, and we had been doing it. We wound up doing it for about 1,000+ days straight, petitioning our bishop for any come rain or shine, come snow, come water. We'd be out there. We'd be praying, be it the Stations of the Cross or the Rosary. And there were at least 2 occasions where during the middle of these prayers, I felt an overwhelming smell of just roses, beautiful roses. And of course, once the rosary's finished, like I'm looking at some of the ladies that are with us. I'm like, who's got the perfume? Who's wearing this? Who's doing this? And they're all like, none of us. Like, it's the same as any other day. It wasn't, you're with these people for 1,000 days. You get to know each other pretty well, right?
Yeah.
So I always took that as just a little grace that Our Lady gave us, that she was pleased again that we were doing this and that we
Beautiful.
should continue the efforts. So little things like that happen. In fact, I would really encourage all of you who are watching, just this is a way we can sort of encourage each other in the Christian Catholic values of faith, hope, and charity. If you've had a similar little experience like that, it doesn't have to be like some grand miraculous thing that somebody, say Vincent Ferrer rose someone from the dead or something of that sort. But you can always share that in the comments. Tell others. It'd be neat to read what has happened to some people, because I suspect a lot of little things like that are going on in people's lives, and we often just don't talk about it. But we should, because it strengthens us and it enlivens our hope, I think.
No, that's very true, David. And just wanted to add one other thing. I was reading a book at the time while I was on the pilgrimage bus, a 1956 book on Fatima, where Sister Lucy is talking about how the importance of doing your daily duty
Mm.
is as a sacrifice to Our Lady is extremely important. And Father Stalin had given a talk about how so many people are on their phones now and they're not doing their daily duty. They're being distracted by all of these different things. And I thought that was interesting, that I was reading about offering your daily duty as a sacrifice, and then I get this purple, beaded rosary, where I thought my first thought was penance. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
And now it's a great connection, daily duty penance, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me move us on to this statement that we got from a couple of bishops. So the Fatima conference was fantastic. We had some excellent speakers. Both you and I, Monique, were there as speakers. So those talks will be available soon. We'll be getting them up for all of you to be able to see them. But one of them in particular was, I thought, interesting, that I'd like to talk about now. We could talk about any of them. But the one by Dr. Micah Higson, for those of you who may not know, we actually interviewed her. So you can go back and watch one of our Fatima Todays and get to know Micah a little bit better. And her husband, now deceased, was also someone who knew Father Gruner and had spoken at some of the Fatima conferences. But, in her charity, in her professional expertise, what she was telling me is that she always likes to bring at least something new to a conference. That she, as I guess an investigative journalist, that's sort of like in your DNA and your blood. And so she took it upon herself to contact a couple of bishops. One was Bishop Joseph Strickland, formerly of the Diocese of Tyler. And I think many of you know who he is and have kind of followed his story. And then the other one was Bishop Bernard Fillet of the Priestly Society of St. Pius X. And
Right.
she basically just asked them about the consecration of Russia. In particular, I think her question was regarding the act that Francis did on March 25th of 2022. If they thought that was the consecration, because it seems many people think it was. Back 20 years ago, I guess everybody was thinking that it was a 1984 consecration by John Paul II. How many conversations I've had on that. Now it seems people are thinking, oh no, it was Francis 2022. And yet it's pretty clear it's neither of those. So the bishops have got some statements. We encourage you to go to our website and read them. I guess I'll just start with maybe your initial reactions, Monique, to those statements by the bishops.
Okay. Well, the two bishop statements were different in the sense that um, Bishop Strickland, he really knows the criteria for the proper consecration of Russia, because right away he said Russia was not the sole object of consecration, and not all the bishops, performed that consecration with Pope Francis. So he zeroed right in on the criteria, for that, and he also mentioned that in order that this consecration would have been a remedy for the spiritual and temporal chastisements that have since unfolded. So I thought that that was really good that he knew the formula right away. It has to be Russia specifically with all the bishops.
Let me
Bishop
just interject there for a minute, because there was one paragraph that stood out for me, one statement. So I'll read
Okay,
that to everyone. Again, read the whole
sure.
thing for yourself. But here's what I sort of thought summarized Strickland's statement very well, His Excellencies. Our Lady's request is not vague or open to reinterpretation. It is precise. Okay, thank you, Bishop Strickland, for that. It's very true. Everyone should realize this. He goes on to say, we do not presume to judge hearts or intentions. Also, very important to say that, I think. But we must speak clearly. Until Russia is consecrated by a legitimate pope in union with the world's bishops, and Russia is named explicitly, the request of Our Lady of Fatima remains unfulfilled. Close quote there. So, I mean, that literally could have been taken from any number of Father Gruner's speeches, any number
Absolutely.
of the articles that we have published in the Fatima Crusader over the years. And it is certainly very good to hear that people are hearing the message, and
Yeah.
people are hearing that. And the other thing that's nice is not that I've known Bishop Strickland for a long time, but I imagine perhaps 10 years ago or 15 years ago, he may not have made such a statement. And so I think that shows a great deal of sort of humility on his part and a willingness to seek after the truth. I mean, that's definitely something I've seen in Bishop Strickland. I see he has a thirst and a zeal for Christ who is the truth. So I thank him for that statement. And yeah, in the entire article, that was my favorite paragraph. So I probably won't read anything else out loud to you, but I did want to read that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I mean, exactly like you. I thought, has he been reading our Crusaders? Because he knew exactly the formula. Now Bishop Fillet, it was a little bit different, in the sense that he said that all the bishops were asked to participate. And that the consecration explicitly mentioned Russia. I would just add a few things: that it is true that Pope Francis asked the bishops to participate, but the Pope needs to command all the bishops to participate, because that is one of the criteria for the consecration, is that the Pope has to do this consecration with all the bishops of the world. That was a requirement set by Our Lady. And also, he said that Russia was mentioned, and it's true, but Russia was mentioned along with consecrating the church, and the world, in particular Russia and Ukraine. Now, it's
Don't forget all
true,
of humanity.
and all of humanity, and all of you. That
Don't
was the
forget
word I
all of
was
our
looking for.
future
Thank you, David.
aspirations.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so the thing is that yes, Russia was mentioned, but it was not the sole object of consecration. And I think that's really key. And a lot of people will criticize us and say that's nitpicking, but Our Lady does want Russia to be the sole object of consecration. Sister Lucy said that in previous statements, that Russia had to be the sole object of consecration. And if I may, there was somebody who made a comment on one of our videos way back, which I thought was a great analogy. He said, when you baptize a child, you say, I baptize you, Johnny, whatever your name is, in the name of the Father and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. You don't say, I baptize you, Johnny, and your parents and your siblings and all your relatives here at the church and everyone here present. No, it's Johnny specifically who is baptized. And it's the same thing that Our Lady wants with the consecration of Russia. She wants Russia to be the specific object of consecration. And so that's the only thing that I would say, in addition to Bishop Fillet's statements. But Bishop Fillet was excellent when he in his statement, when he talked about how Pope Francis, he needs to promote devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, because this is what Our Lady said, that God wishes to establish devotion to her Immaculate Heart, right? So it's to save souls. It's very important. And Bishop Fillet mentioned that, which I was grateful for. And he also said that Pope Francis didn't call upon the world to convert, and he didn't call for acts of reparation for all the offenses have been made for all of these years of disobedience. Okay, so I think that was very important for him to say. I was grateful that he said that, because let's face it, I mean, the third secret with Our Lady's words has not been released, and the third secret was supposed to be released in 1960. Here we are in 2025. It's 65 years of not having that. The consecration still hasn't been done properly, right? And Bishop Fillet said, we have not seen the fruits of the consecration, which would be Russia converting, as well as the period of peace given to the world. We have not seen the fruits of the consecration. So therefore, it has not been done the way Our Lady asked.
All very true. I guess I'll just add a few statements there, or a few details to what you said, Monique. Agree with everything you said, but you know, I thought it was interesting because this also shows how maybe you don't understand the whole history. My understanding from what I've read is that in 1984, John Paul II did again invite all the bishops to join him. Some were physically present, but he made that invitation. But again, he made it sort of like a free will. And it was interesting because in reading Fillet's statement, I got the impression that Fillet was saying that this was a new material element, as if Francis inviting the bishops was the first time that had been done. And I want to say, no, actually, it had been done before. John Paul II has also done that in 1984. And again, the importance there being that's actually not what Our Lady asked. This goes back to what our Lord has said through Sister Lucia, that in fact, the Pope's going to have to command them. And sometimes people ask and wonder why. Well, I think there's a lot of reasons that are now clearer today. One of the great problems that we're facing is since Vatican II, we've had collegiality. Now it's going under the name and has sort of morphed into synodality. But it's this whole idea that rejects the hierarchical order established by God and the authority that God establishes here on earth in his church so as to mirror his own authority. Even the hierarchy that you see, although all three persons are equal in the Blessed Trinity, there remains at some level a kind of hierarchy. There is Father, there is Son, there is Holy Ghost. But anyway, the popes have really sort of not exercised papal authority since Fatima's request, since Our Lady's requested Fatima to consecrate Russia. And it seems clear that part of the remedy that we need today is that the Pope, in fact, exercise the authority that God has given him. And so when he commands the bishops, it's showing that. Not only that, but the church has been suffering from a schism for well over, we're approaching 1,000 years of at least schism with the Eastern Orthodox. And that has to be healed. And I believe that will happen through Our Lady of Fatima, because you can't have peace in the world when the church is divided. But again, what is precisely part of the problem there? That the bishops who have left the authority of the Pope have to accept the authority of the Pope. And a clear way of showing that is when he commands you to do something, you say, okay, regardless of what I feel about it, I will obey. So there really is a very importance there with the command coming through the hierarchy. And I think that has not been perhaps emphasized sufficiently there. So I wanted to mention that. You mentioned great on reparation and conversion. Yes, that's integral to the Message of Fatima. And it is unfortunate that in the long text formulae that Francis used in 2022, reparation was never mentioned. Interestingly, also, I thought very sad that Fatima was never mentioned. Like, aren't we going to acknowledge and thank Our Lady for coming to Fatima? But we have this big long talk and we never mention Fatima. That's a little weird, I think. You sort of wonder, like, there's a disconnect there. Like, are we really trying to acknowledge and honor Our Lady, acknowledge that she came and asked us for this, and that we're doing this in response to her request at Fatima? And maybe part of that is because another thing was never mentioned that I thought was very strange is the rosary. Because the rosary, as we know, she insists all 6 times that she appears at Fatima, pray the rosary every day, pray the rosary every day, pray the rosary every day. You would think that when we're trying to obey her and we're trying to get the consecration in the way she wants, there'd be at least a reference to the role of Fatima, the rosary, reparation. And so then that sort of leads one to think, well, are they really trying to do what Our Lady wants? And I think that's where I really like what Bishop Strickland said, because we're not going to judge that. None of us can judge that. We certainly can't judge the act of another person, let alone a bishop, let alone the Pope. But you reveal yourself in what you say and what you do. And I would say that more than anything in this case, God's the one who's going to judge it. God accepts a consecration or not. But what we know for certain is when the consecration is accepted, then Our Lady's going to fulfill her promises. So there will be a period of peace in the world, which we haven't had. There's been no peace in the world since 1929 when she requested it. There has not been peace in the world at any moment. There's always been war going on. And more people have been killed by war in these last 100 years than in the rest of human history combined. So we don't have peace. And I'm not even talking right now about the war on the children in utero. I mean, if we had those numbers, it's massively astronomically larger. I'm just talking about like wars with guns and bullets and bombs and stuff like that. But and then, of course, Russia has not yet converted. It isn't merely becoming more religious or spiritual. It isn't merely building churches, and it isn't merely trying to have a resurgence of a schismatic Orthodox religion in your country. When Our Lady talks about conversion, it's to the one holy, true, apostolic, Roman, and Catholic Church, again, under the Pope. Back to why commanding is so important. So we haven't seen that. And we know it's going to happen promptly because God has said he wants the world to recognize this as a victory, as a specific intercession of Our Lady's Immaculate Heart.
Yeah.
Because that's why he wants that devotion. So you can't have a consecration and then, 10 years later have peace and 20 years later have Russia convert, because then no one, we're human beings, we see cause and effect. No one's going to say, oh, it's because of that consecration. Who's attributed to the Immaculate Heart of Mary? And that's the whole reason why God is asking for this, because he wants devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So the world, the church, is going to have to acknowledge that this peace that comes about and this conversion that comes about is directly through the intercession of Our Lady's Immaculate Heart. That's why God has set it up this way. Like, we have to understand sort of the divine logic that God himself has revealed to us, because we're privileged to know his will in this matter. Right? God doesn't have to reveal his will to us, but he has, and he sent his mother to reveal his will. So I would say that's something I think that's very important for us to understand, that why these things, because ultimately God wants devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which includes reparation, because it's been so offended. And he is so outraged by what the blasphemies, the 5 blasphemies that have been committed against his most holy and perfect mother. So that's
two things I would add to that. One, when people finally get to listen to Mikey Hickson's talk, they're really going to see how much Our Lady has been offended in the last century, especially at Vatican II. When I heard part of her speech, I was actually really horrified. And I thought, we're making reparation on the first Saturdays for the 5 blasphemies against Our Lady. But honestly, we need to be making reparation for a lot more. And I will let people watch the video to find out about that. But really, we need to be making reparation. And secondly, my point has always been that when the consecration of Russia happens, people will not be arguing about whether or not the consecration took place, because you're going to see the results right away.
Yeah, and I think that's God's grace, and that's what God is intending, and what God will do, and what Our Lady will do. So there will be no need for argument. You and I won't have to be here on a video, nor will His Excellency Bishop Fillet or Bishop Strickland have to be telling people the consecration was done.
Exactly.
We're going to see it for ourselves. Just like I always say, when you were at the Miracle of the Sun there at the COVID area on October 13th, 1917, if you were there, you didn't need anyone to tell you a miracle took place. You knew it. You knew it. In fact, if someone had told you a miracle did not take place, as some of the atheistic publications were trying to say, you'd be like, no, it did. And you could be an atheist present, and you'd be telling your own publication, sorry, a miracle did take place. I saw it.
Yeah.
I witnessed it. So too, it will be even more monumental, more miraculous with what happens once the consecration of Russia is effected and we actually obey Our Lady. So we've got to spread that word, right?
Absolutely. And we have to pray very, very hard that our new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, will do the consecration with all the bishops of the world in the manner that Our Lady requested. We need to pray and sacrifice for that intention.
We certainly do, because the time is late and we want it to be done sooner than later. The sooner that consecration takes place, because as we've always said on this show, that's what's going to heal the remedies. That's really going to be the only solution. It is Our Lady. So, but as we say,
and just to say, because we didn't really talk about the March for Life a lot, but I will say this: we have articles on the website, but all of the problems in the church, the problems in the world, the whole pro-life movement, our struggles against the culture of death, all of these things are going to be solved when the consecration of Russia happens.
well, that brings us to the end of today's show. I do thank you for listening. I encourage you to share this with others, especially this piece, so that everyone understands what really is the purpose for the consecration of Russia, how it has to be effected. We have got to do more to get this word out. Thankfully, some people are coming around over the years and the decades, but we need a lot more Catholics coming around. So please do your part. You can do a lot just by sharing this video, by subscribing to this channel, and telling other people about this. Encourage them to watch this video so they can hear about it. We love to hear your feedback and your comments down below, as well as those little ways that God or Our Lady has worked in your life.
Absolutely. And remember, Our Lady of Fatima has given us the only solution for the problems of our times. God bless you, everyone. Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us.